The program you will now hear is a tribute to the young heroes of our country who died in the recent hostilities with Pakistan. Their valor is epitomized in the brief life story of a young officer who laid down his life in the famous tank battle at Sialkot.
The vacant chair. September 22nd was memorable for the first news.
This is All India Radio. Here is the news read by Lotika Ratnam. Pakistan has now agreed to a ceasefire effective from about 1 hour ago. India's willingness to have a ceasefire had been conveyed to the Security Council earlier.
It was a ceasefire on all fronts. But even as the guns fell silent, the long black-bordered lists of those killed brought the first news of tragedy to many homes. The voice you will now hear is the voice of a man so bereaved. He lost an only son in one of the many famous tank battles fought during the hostilities with Pakistan. He wishes to remain anonymous, and we shall honor that promise. He speaks for many homes in which today there is a vacant chair. The story of his boy could have been, with variations, the story of your boy, whom we honor in this program.
My son, popularly known amongst his friends, colleagues in the army, and all the relatives, he was known as Tipu. Tipu had only his two sisters to play with and a doting grandmother. So as he grew up, we, my wife and myself, we always felt that he was coming up as a, what you call, a sissy. He would never do anything boyish. So the day when he was about 5 or 6 years old, he once was found climbing a wall in the mess that we were staying. And simultaneously with that, my mother kicked up a roar as if the sky was falling down. Oh, the child will fall down. Please, please go help. And my wife came running out. She said, "What has happened?" He said, "Look, he has climbed up the wall." So my wife smiled and she said, "On the contrary, I feel like celebrating the occasions because this is the first time that he has done something boyish."
And so he grew.
I can remember like yesterday, small Tipu struggling with a suitcase and a sola hat that his grandmother had insisted that he must carry while he is going about. He was joining the school party on a trip to Rajasthan. And he insisted on carrying it himself to the school bus when we reached there to leave him and see him off. He came back a week later, but it was not Tipu, the sissy, that came back. It was a different person. He was I don't know how to put it, but he was entirely a grown-up person. He never looked back from that. Every day you could see that he was growing. In the school, he joined all outdoor activities. He became eventually their sports prefect. He captained their swimming team, their basketball team, and swimming particularly was his passion, and that was his passion to his last days.
His school days.
I remember again, like yesterday, the day the result was declared. He came back after finding out the results late at night, and he lay down in his bed. We had been worried because it was past midnight when he came back after finding out the results, and we were also worried because everybody thought that he's spending so much time in sports that he may not have done well in his studies and he may have plucked, and that is why perhaps he hasn't the face of coming back. But no, he came back having missed the first win by a very short margin, and he lay back in his bed, closed his eyes, said his prayers, which he never missed, and he said, "I don't know about anybody else, but I'm very pleased with myself. I'm very pleased with the school."
He went to college and university and the OTS.
He eventually captained the swimming team for the college. He captained the swimming team of the university. He represented Delhi State and so many other institutions. Delhi State particularly he represented in the nationals. But still, all the same, my wife and myself could not get over the original impression that he was a sissy till the Chinese, their treacherous invasion came along and the emergency commissions were thrown open. One day, just after that, I was sitting when he came up to me and he said that I have decided to join the army. You know, Daddy ji, I have always loved an outdoor life. I have always been a sportsman, and I have decided that I'll join the army. I told him, I said, "Tipu, you know what all the implications of a service career are?" He says, "Yes, I fully realize them, but I have made up my mind." I said, "God bless you." Thereafter, he joined for his training the OTS that had been set up at Pune. And there again it was the blaze of the same thing. His sports winning him laurels everywhere. He got so many colors there. He became one of their school's most favorite and the commandant's most favorite under officers.
He joined the army.
He said, I have joined the army, a fighting service, and I'll go to a fighting army. And once he had made up that mind, in spite of my asking him, advising him in a couple of my letters, and his insisting, once he had made up his mind that he's going to a fighting army, there was not much difficulty in choosing the regiment that he was going to, or the army he was going to, because out of our family, his uncles, my wife's cousin, and her younger brother, they have already been serving with Lancers, to which he elected to join.
He was popular, dedicated, and efficient.
I have met a number of officers. Actually, squadron commander, he had suddenly taken ill and was in the military hospital next door to where I am living. And Tipu wrote to me that if you please could drop in now and again and see if he needs anything and be of any use. So I went in there so many times, and then that major came over to my place so many times. He was always loud in praise of this little sissy of ours, because he had, at that young age, with that little experience, had suddenly to shoulder the responsibility of the squadron in his place and act as a squadron commander. At least that's what he told me. And he was glad that he, from all reports that he was receiving, that he was doing very well.
His passion was swimming.
Recently, he came on 45 days leave to us from the middle of July to the third week of August. Actually, in fact, he left us only on 22nd to rejoin his duties, 2 days before his 23rd birthday. And even though it was a leave, a very well earned leave, probably his first leave in service career, as soon as he arrived here, he sent word back to his CEO to send his swimming team over, and made arrangements here for practicing them early in the morning and again every evening. The result was that those Jawans came and lined up opposite our house every morning at about 6 o'clock. And then again in the evening at 4 o'clock. He would take them out to his school's pool or any other place that he could arrange. And most of his time was spent on that.
Many of his dreams he realized.
Somebody was telling me, I don't know how far it's correct, that's the first time that a second lieutenant captained the services team, any services team, to the nationals. I don't know how far it's true, but it certainly is that he, for the 2 years that he was in service, in both the years, he captained their water polo team to the nationals.
And there was the man, the fighting man, tempered like a coiled spring. His letters, just before hostilities began.
If I say that he was prepared, not prepared, he was itching for it, I don't think I'll be very wrong. For instance, in the very last letter that he wrote to his mother on the 7th, that is 1 day before he offered his life, he writes, I am fighting fit. Yep, that's what I am. To me, a couple of days earlier, he had written at that time he was in one of the backward stations where his regiment had been withdrawn after having done more than their quota of the border duties. And they were just about being, because of this trouble coming up, they were on the point of being drawn back to the operational areas again. He wrote to me, "Life is so dull in this peacetime station. I'm so glad we are going back. And you know, I'm particularly glad that we are going back where we were, because we know that area so well. And otherwise too, Daddyji, you know, a cock fights best from his own dunghill." And another person who I met only yesterday, the wife of one of the majors of the regiment, she was perhaps one of the last to meet him. She said, "Oh, I'm so glad we are going. I hope we are not brought back this time without a fight." And he did have a fight.
And finally, the battlefield. The moment of truth. The sacrifice. The valor. The glory.
Well, from what I have heard so far is that he, along with his CO, were going in a tank when, that was probably after the skirmishes were sort of easing out and there was a comparative lull or something, when a shell hit the tank. The CO was the only survivor.
So I put my last question. Your son has made the supreme sacrifice by laying down his life for the country. As his father, we would not beguile you from a loss so overwhelming. And we know your tragedy must be reflected in many homes today where there is a vacant chair. As a father whose only son made the supreme sacrifice, you have a very special right to speak for those who have suffered overwhelmingly personal losses in this war with Pakistan.
I have here a message, a telegram that has come from a very dear Mohammedan friend of the family, Mr. K.A. Abbas. He says, "Your sacrifice for nation, first in our family." This is what I want to emphasize. First in our family. Even he is writing, "During this war, may God give you all and us strength to bear this." The thought that comes to my mind is that he, Tipu, and so many others have laid down their lives. It's a very painful thing for the bereaved families, because once they are bereaved, war is no longer an impersonal event. It's a very personal and a very pinching experience. But to me, it brings the thought that this is the first war that we have been engaged in for our honor, for our policies, and it has certainly raised our stature. We have come out worthily out of it. No price could be enough for it. I would also like those who control the destinies of this nation, and also the masses, the general public, not to forget the blood of these boys and the tears of their parents that have gone into this struggle and which have brought us out of it covered with glory.
The advent of death is like the coming of a great wind. No man knows whence it is, nor where it goes. Its visitation is often without reason, and its action without intent, the understanding may perceive. One thing alone it shows: by his death man sets a seal upon his life, and in the manner of his dying is revealed the strength of his spirit. For the spirit of man is born in the secret places of his will, and shaped by the private utterance of his desires. He himself knows not its ways, or perceives the manner of its growth. But if the spirit be set upon high things, then in death it will be without fear, not as the foolish, who know not solemnity, but with true courage, dignity, and consideration. Death is a solemn thing, but much of the sting is lost in the comfort of the words uttered by those who have suffered because of it.